Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share our experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot training for a rating or just thinking about getting started in aviation, we like to think of this podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. I drew a blank there. It's not like I haven't done this
Super
almost 100
inspiring.
times.
Super inspiring, Ben.
That's inspiring.
That's what I'm all about. Tonight, we're going to talk about finding an A&P, kind of adjacent to the last episode we talked about, and maybe a little lane of peak discussion. I don't know. We'll see what we get into. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ben, and I am an IFR-rated pilot with a commercial certificate based in the metro Atlanta area, flying a Cessna 182, sometimes called the Beast. I'll be taking her out on Wednesday of this week.
Nice.
Yeah. Joining me tonight, as always, he's a private pilot. He's in Nashville, Tennessee. He's living right there on Music Row, which is the home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He's flying tailwheels, everybody drink. He also flies a Cherokee 180 named Lucy, and his name is Brian Siskin. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. And I was wondering if I should, I like the Bachelorette Super Charlie term that I came up with that I like to take a lot of credit for. But there's also a part of me that kind of wishes I would have made it the Woo Girls Super Charlie. The Woo Girls.
That's a strong candidate, but I'm not sure everybody would necessarily completely get it as easily as they do the Bachelorette Super Charlie.
Well, you know, in the same way that a lot of us midlifers maybe are, you know, driving a Corvette, wearing New Balance,
cargo shorts,
with the tucked in shirt and all that. There's a Bachelorette uniform, and you know them when you see them. You can tell they've got their white boots, they've got their whole thing, and maybe Mark, you come to Nashville sometime. You can get a cowboy hat and join in and be right in the mix.
I don't really feel like I'm fit for a Bachelorette, though.
It is pretty amazing. When we did the fly-in there last year, you know, we hear that it's the Bachelorette capital of the world, but when you drive down Broadway, it is just clumps of people, and they're all Bachelorette parties, all just moving from one location to the next. There's no other people there other than Bachelorette parties, it feels like.
Including on the airplane. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you make your culture a Disneyland for binge drinking. So, anyway, super glad to be here from Nashville, and glad to be here with you guys tonight. And also, I'm super excited about this topic because, and I hope that we get a chance to really, I don't know if you guys remember, but we did this non-event fly-in when we went to go see the OG midlife pilot, Chris Moran, at his airport in Fairmont, West Virginia. Pepperoni rolls and all. And I will never forget the conversation that we had outside of his hangar where Mark was going through his very special flying technique that he swears by. And I want to make sure we get into this because I want to know what everybody thinks about it. And Mark was going to take me up in my plane and show me how this works. And then there were some mechanics on the phone that said, I don't know if this is the thing. So Mark, you guys stick around for this podcast because this is going to be Mark proving this out as the way that he flies. And I think this is going to be fascinating. So Stick
He's
around.
shaking his head, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how this plays out.
This is going to be great.
Let me introduce our friend. He's a sport pilot based in Portland, Oregon. He flies a Flight Design CTLS. We like to call it the egg, and we call him Timestamp Tedder. Bringing that back, Ted. I like that description of you.
Yeah, it works well. Yeah.
It does.
Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Joining us in the hot seat tonight, apparently, thanks to Mr. Siskin. He's the most Midwestern North Carolinian we know of, but we only know about 4 people from North Carolina, Brian being one of them.
I am.
It's our friend Wendell, also known as Wendell D, also known as Mark. Good evening, sir.
Hello, also known as not an A&P. So,
Right.
yeah, and absolutely nailed it. The third rail of aviation discussion, lean of peak. I agree with that. And I'm feeling a little bit, after Brian's introduction there, I'm feeling suddenly gotten nervous. I'm like, why did I agree to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
I love it. By the way, that's a good show title right there. The third rail, lean of peak, the third rail of aviation discussion. This is fantastic. Thanks for that, Ryan.
Yes, I think we have that title. We're recording a doubleheader tonight, as if anybody cares. But, Ted, we did talk a little bit about your Sunset Burger.
Yeah.
But I did want to hear a little bit more about the desert camping, because the photo that you posted, again, I feel like it was AI generated, but I'm sure it wasn't.
Modern cell phone night photography is fantastic. The moon was about a third full, and now I know next time I go out to the desert to go when there's no moon, so that I can really see the stars. In the Northwest, you don't see the stars a lot because there's always clouds. And so I went to lower right-hand corner of Oregon where there is nobody, and went to the Alvord Desert. It is 6 miles wide, 10 miles long, dry lake bed. And that's 10 miles sounds like a bit. That's 60 square miles when you think about that. And there were other people there, including some people that decided to take modern muscle cars and got them stuck in the mud and whatever. There were 2 other planes, and I found them on frequency about my 4th try on frequency. So you've got 5 fingers. You also got 4 fingers as a frequency, and that's where I found them. And so it was great once we could coordinate how we were flying so that we didn't have to worry. We just flew in a circle. And so I spent quite a bit of time, just playing, because there's no restriction on your altitude. You just have to stay away from the handful of people that are there. And I learned that when you get below about 50 feet, especially about 40 feet, that's when you can feel this cushion. And it was amazing to sit there and fly for a couple of miles and just get the plane into that and really feel, what's it called? Why can't I think of that term?
You're repeating ground effect. I think.
Ground effect. Thank you. Yeah. And it was like, you got to that and it's like, there was just a cushion underneath the plane. And it was so cool to just feel that.
So are there any designated runways, or is this just a dry lake bed? You land where the wind?
It's all a runway. Yeah. And there wasn't enough wind. So, we were just kind of landing in any direction. And I did the thing where I landed about 6 times in a row, going up about 500 feet and then back down, up, back down, and everything else, and had a lot of fun with that. So there aren't many chances that you get to do that. And it was so cool. So yeah, did that and spent the night out there. It's a alkaline lake bed. And that means there are alkali flies there, which I hadn't thought about. Basically like brine shrimp are in that same category. So there are a bunch of flies around. They don't bite, but it was kind of annoying. But
right.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Just be out there in the middle of nowhere. And
nice.
No cell signal.
How far a flight was it for you from your home airport?
If I went from home, it'd be about 3 hours.
Okay.
So it's not bad. I've never been there because it takes so long to get there. And RV campers and like van people like going out there. But it was a lot of fun to go there.
So you burned a grand total of 6 gallons. I'm sorry, Brian. You burned a total of 6 gallons of gas going out there impact then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Looks amazing. Yeah. There's something about just everybody's in such light polluted places. You know, when you can get to any place where you can see the stars, it is always just a good feeling. And then, you know, when you think about all the money you spend on aviation and how the bills are piling up, but then you look out there and you see we're just stardust, man. You know, and they can't they can send all the letters they want to my house, but I mean, what are we really, man? You know?
Well, hopefully I'll get a video out by the time this episode drops. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's so good. So good. You're really in the promised land for so much aviation. It's kind of ridiculous. Also, I'm jealous of all for whatever reason, every little airport out there, the runways are all basically just the width of sidewalks. And I love that. I don't know what it is. I wish that there were more bizarrely narrow runways out here.
Yeah, well, that's what broke my brain when you said that basically, which it's a great thing, but when you go literal cross country, that you try to land at deltas because there's always services. And it's like, man, there are not many deltas that I land at. So it's just different. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, wanted to go ahead and get into our topic tonight. Chat's already kind of getting involved with it as well. But, you know, I had an experience. Fortunately, it wasn't with me or my A&P, but I was involved with a person who was having to shop for an A&P. And he or she, we'll keep them anonymous, you know, had been using this mechanic, and, you know, the problem was they'd had him for a while, but it was taking them 3 or 4 times to fix the same item. In other words, they would drop it in saying, this is the squawk. They would render it fixed and then come back and they would have the same problem. And then 2 more times after that. And so they kind of felt like it was the A&P saying, I've got too many other more profitable customers. And so we're going elsewhere. And, you know, that's just something that I think as aircraft owners or co-owners, as it were, that's something we really have to kind of be mindful for. And not all of us have the luxury of having a mechanic on the field that we can use on a regular basis, that we have to fly somewhere to have our plane worked on.
Yep.
And if you're going to do that, I guess it at least opens up the world for a lot more opportunity. So we wanted to open up the discussion tonight. I'd like to hear from you guys how you would about picking a mechanic that you're using. And is this the only one that you've had, or has there been other experiences that we can maybe provide our audience who are typically midlifers? We get some young folks that own their aircraft and they're having to go through this for the first time. I'm hoping that maybe can find some value in this.
Yeah. You know, some people here are as young as 31.
Yeah. Which, you know, they still were born in the 1900s, but.
True. My situation's slightly weird just because of the SLSA and being in a Rotax, where technically any A&P can work on it. Most of them are not thrilled by it. When I was buying the plane and going to the airport I was at, the main mechanic on the field said, we do not work on SLSA, period. We work on experimental, we work on certified. We don't want to deal with that. And that really kind of set me on that path. And especially trying to find somebody who is an expert on a plane there's only 200 of in the US. I had found somebody that I really liked, and he was basically medically retiring out of being a mechanic. And so at the very last minute, in the same month my annual was due, I found the shop that I'm at. And it turns out, and said, Checkmate Barry's Airport. They do quite a bit of Rotax work. They, I think, had seen a flight design before, but they'd done enough things that were similar that they weren't afraid to work on it. So that's a different situation than you're in, where everybody has seen every Continental and every Lycoming that exists. There are only 12 engines in planes, basically, that exist. But that's one more factor that goes into this.
Definitely. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I find the psychology of the whole problem to be fascinating in terms of even as it relates to cars. I have a couple of old Toyotas from the 80s, and you would think this is a no-brainer for a mechanic. This is some of the easiest stuff you can work on. There's room to work on it, and these are pretty simple 4-cylinder engines.
Yeah.
And finding people that will work on them is nearly impossible, because we have reached a point where true mechanics are less and less, and people that are following scripts of just parts replacement as a means of solving problems, and throwing parts at a problem to solve it, and using diagnostics as a way to justify that without having a really holistic sense of what's going on, or sort of forest for the trees kind of things. Like, it's hard to, when I see a mechanic take a long screwdriver and put his ear up to it, then I go, okay, this guy actually understands what's going on. When he's just like, well, the data just says this, and so we're just going to replace this. It's just a totally different thing. So you see this I see this with cars. You definitely see it with airplanes. And there's all kinds of ways that this can go. For our situation, we were very lucky to find the partnership kind of formed before me had befriended this particular mechanic. And even though he actually kind of hates Pipers, I think, in a lot of ways. He also said that the autopilot that he installed in our plane was in his 50 years of being a mechanic, the most PIA thing he'd ever done. All that to be said, he's great for certain things, but you have everything's got a different scenario. We've got 3 mechanics that we work with. So we have one that's kind of our friendly guy that when he's available and it's the right job for him to do, then great. And that can range from a lot of things. I mean, he's helped us with a lot of things. But then we also have the mechanic that's on the field that's good for certain things. And then there's a mechanic at another airport nearby that is, to me, the guy that when it gets down to carburetor rebuild type things or that level of work, then his shop is probably better for some of those things. And they all have their pros and cons in terms of how fast are we going to get this back? How confident are we going to be that this is done the first time? How much is this going to cost? Because some are very friendly to us and kind and benevolent, and they pity us. Whereas others, just run their playbook. And so, that's been our situation. Mark, what's yours?
Well, so, when I owned the Cherokee 140, I found a mechanic that I really liked. And the main thing I liked about him was that he let me help him work on the airplane. In fact, he encouraged it. He wanted me to come help, and he was a natural teacher. He really enjoyed. He had 3 apprentices, A&P apprentices that he was working with all the time, and he still has A&P apprentices that are always working with him. And so he encouraged me to jump in and monkey around with the airplane, and that I really, really liked. And he taught me things, and he'd say, hey, this is why it does this, and this is where. So I have pulled the prop on airplane. I have re-rigged the ailerons. I have just taken apart. I have taken off, disassembled the carburetor, installed a temperature probe in it, put it back together, and put it back on the airplane under his supervision. And so that guy he's my favorite guy in the whole world. He's fantastic. When we went to the 235, we had a guy that has been doing the annuals on the 235 for a long time. And so it was a very different experience working with him. He is very much of the opinion that he came from a military background, and an awful lot of the military folks, they have this idea that they're in charge and they tell us what to do. And that doesn't really work so well for me. I find that to be troublesome. So the relationship with him is, I'm not involved in that relationship anymore. I can't be. I just can't be involved in that relationship with him. There's one guy in the partnership who works with him great, and he works with him. So we do our annuals with him because he's had a history of the airplane, and I don't want to take the airplane to a new mechanic who is going to say, hey, I haven't personally inspected every single one of these ADs. And so now we got to go through incredibly expensive. So we stick with the guy who's doing the annual. I just don't work with him. But whenever we have any sort of non-annual type maintenance, we go to the guy that I worked with on the 140, and he's always wanting me to help him. He's always saying, hey, do this, turn that. And I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. There's so many mechanics that are, there's that whole thing of owner assisted annuals versus not. And I'm so glad that we have somebody that encourages and teaches and wants us to be a part of that. And it helps us reduce the cost massively. And if he's not available, then we have to go to another one that's going to be wildly more expensive. So, but that's interesting, especially when you're talking about through the prism of the partnership dynamic, where you've got people that own different parts of maybe different types of maintenance and are fronting the process with different mechanics at different times. So it's not just like one mechanic for a plane. Yeah.
Well,
right.
I want to underline that about kind of why we, especially I, really promote partnerships for midlifers that are getting into flying and want to buy a plane, because when you get into a partnership, there is a hangar and there is an A&P who knows the plane. You're not trying to figure this stuff out from scratch. And it may not be the best hangar or the best A&P, but wow, that's a lot better than doing all of that yourself. So there's a huge advantage to that. And Brian is a textbook example of that, where the partnership came with a hangar and it came with an A&P, and that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I want to echo that, because like our partnership came with an A&P too, and we're not switching off of him for annuals, right? The cost of switching off of him is expensive. We are switching off of him for sort of ad hoc work that we do periodically, but the benefit of getting, of sticking with the same A&P that has been with the airplane for a while is really high.
So just so I can throw my 2 cents worth into this, we've had basically 2 mechanics since we got the plane in 2017. The first mechanic was awesome. Worked on a lot of Cessnas. He didn't have a hangar to do his work at McCollum, but he did all of his work. He didn't have a hangar anywhere. He would just come to you in a truck with all the tools and everything he needed. And we would, the folks at the FBO would allow us to use a hangar for 4 hours or 3 days or whatever we needed, whatever the work required. So it was pick up the phone and call him, and he would put it on a schedule, and we didn't have to do anything. He would have it towed. It was really nice. Unfortunately, he died in a plane crash, in his plane.
Oh,
yeah. On takeoff, he lost his prop.
what?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was terrible. So we found our current one, and he made a comment. I was out at the airport the other day, and sometimes just go by there and check in with him. But he made the comment. He goes, I approach an annual. I approach all maintenance. It's got to be safe. That's always going to be the top priority. But I know that my customers don't have endless funds. Yep. He's working on piston airplanes. There's some twins, there's single engines, but he goes, I try to spend your money the way I would want to spend my money. And so if it can be deferred or it can be done in a different manner, if he doesn't have to send out for an OEM part that he can fabricate himself, he's going to do it. And he's done that throughout the entire time. So we feel we're there. We're not using anybody else. He's just our guy. And then for an oil change or that, we had an oil change done at Fredericksburg.
Yep.
Those are, would love to give them that business, but sometimes it's just not practical. So we use a guy on our airport, and they do a good enough job, and it's an oil change, and plane's still running. So we really got no complaints.
Well, let me hit Virgil's comment here. He said, talking about the advantage of partnerships, he said, even better when the partnership includes an A&P. That's kind of the Aviation 101 thing, which is if you're looking to date, perhaps date an A&P.
Yeah.
We should have thought of that. That's a great way to get into this.
I'm taking a little bit different tact. I've actually spawned a child that's going to be an A&P.
There you go.
So,
and you married into a plane. So,
and I married into a plane, or technically my sister married into a plane. But hey, that's again lucky on both counts.
Well, you guys want to hit some of the formalities, and then we'll get back into this. And I want to I want to make sure we turn the corner too to get into this Lena Peak thing with Mark, because I can't wait.
Yeah, you want to hit belly scrub for us?
I can.
Mark, did you say you could do the belly scrub?
No, I can wait.
Oh,
I thought he was volunteering for it, and then he went
the belly scrub.
Then he went straight on mute. It's like, I'm volunteering to do it, and I'm out of here.
Yeah. Mark's going to start doing oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. What, honey? What?
Exactly.
Oh, what? Well, okay. You get the fire extinguisher. I'll be right there. Hey guys, I got to go. So housekeeping, belly scrub. We're grateful for you all making this the best pilot community that we know of, a positive space. We share everything from training experiences, share personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends. Connect with us, join our Patreon community from $1 a month, or do a one-time annual Patreon, 25 cents per episode. Access exclusive content, including check ride debriefs, killing zone conversations, and more. 10% supports Freedom Aviation Network's anti-human trafficking efforts. Share your stories with us. Just go to midlifepilotpodcast.com and you can send us a message, and you'll probably hear yours on the show. For everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community feedback, merch, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com.
Very
Excellent.
good.
I saved something I wanted to talk about in the Discord community. OG Chris C, New York Chris C, and so I'm going to read a little bit of what he said. It's easier than summarizing it. So he said, just got back from what I would consider my first successful flight with my wife. The flights we've tried before, she suffered from anxiety and nausea, but she did great this time. We flew up the St. Lawrence River and overflew some of our favorite summer weekend spots. She really enjoyed picking up places we like to spend time at. Even after one of my worst landings in a while, flared too high, dropped down a little hard, she was excited that we did it and looking forward to doing more. A great day. That is awesome.
That's huge. That's a game changer, in my opinion. When they're looking forward to the next one, that's a glorious day.
That also reminds me of you, Ben, because it's like, this was a terrible landing. And she's like, yeah, whatever. It was fine.
Yeah.
And that's
just like the rest of them.
It's the phrase I try to use. It's fine. Like,
they're just so glad to be on the ground. They don't care, man.
Exactly. No parts were left behind.
When your wife looks you dead in the eye and says, "Thank you for not killing me."
I'm sorry. I had a similar experience with my wife to Chris C, where we had driven to Wisconsin and then for reasons had to go back, and the mechanism was flying back. And she looks over at me about 2/3 of the way there and says, "This is so much better."
Game changes, Mark.
Yep. The game
changes.
Well, Brian, we've got some feedback, actually a review. Do you want to read that from Mountain Matt?
So just so you guys know, you can leave us 5-star reviews only on Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts takes our reviews from you, and then we read them here. It's a very simple throughput, input, output. So just go to Apple Podcasts and just leave the review, and then I will read it just like this. Mountain Rat Matt says, found it. If you are midlife and working on your PPL, thinking about it, or certificated, this is the podcast for you. I found this podcast a while back and look forward to it every week. The Discord makes it even better It is a great resource for those of us not necessarily in our early 20s on the career track who just enjoy flying and the activities surrounding flying. Give it a listen and see for yourself. So thank you for that, Mountain Rat Matt. And it's been cool to see your journey and to hear about all the things that you've had happen that are wonderful in your journey, Mountain Rat Matt. So cool to have you in the Discord, and thanks for the review.
Yeah, he went through the tailwheel journey. So
That's right.
It was a great moment. Andy H also wrote in, and he actually addressed it to Ben. So Ben, do you want to read that to us?
I'd be glad to. From Andy H. He says, "Hey, Ben, just passed my IFR check ride today. Glad to be one of not very many like you. There's probably different reasons he doesn't want to be like me, and that's completely understandable. I now can follow along with any IFR talk on the podcast. Have a good weekend, and thanks for giving me something to listen to when I go to work. Good job, Andy H." And again, that instrument rating, Brian, I'm not picking on you when I say this, but it does. It's a whole new world.
And
Yeah, I'm all for it, man.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. If you guys want to start a GoFundMe and get me my instrument rating, then let's do it. But I am tired of people telling me, guys, Brian, you really should. There's only one barrier between me and an instrument rating besides the feeble brain power that I can offer that kind of study. And
That's a pretty big barrier.
Sheer economics.
Yeah.
So I've had it with people telling me, you really should get your instrument rating. I want my instrument rating. Okay. Grant over. I'm inspired by you, Mark.
Can we?
Sorry. I was going to say, well, Brian, you really should get your instrument rating.
I'm going to have you, write out a cardboard sign and put out the cup, and be at an interstate exit, and just need my IFR. Yeah, yeah.
So private pilot, need my IFR.
Yeah. Did I tell you I'm a pilot? Yeah. So we're talking about A&Ps, and one of the things, I don't know if you've got this in a concise format, if you've ever thought about it in this way, Mark, but one of the things I've kind of gleaned from you is there's care and feeding of your A&P, but there's also the ground rules of dealing with the A&P, which is, this is my plane. I'm giving it to you to perform an annual. This isn't a blank check. So
that's right. So
yeah.
Well, so I don't know how. I don't know if I've got it in any structured. It's structured in my head. I haven't sort of written it out. But in most states in the U.S., when you bring your car to a mechanic, they are required by law to give you a written estimate, itemized list of everything that they want to do, and a written estimate of the cost before they do any work. And then you sign something that says, "Hey, I authorize you to do this work." In the aviation community, that isn't the case. That is not the way that it works for aviation. There's no law requiring that.
So Mike Bush wrote an article in 2003 called "Time and Materials," and I'll link to that, which is talking about this problem.
Yeah, which is where a lot of this is. I am an acolyte in the school of Mike Bush. I am a big fan. So
I would say you're probably more of a bishop, or maybe even a Monsignor than that. I think you're undercutting yourself.
Bishop or a rook? Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, he basically, the idea is that rather than require the federal government to say this is, or a state government to say, "Hey, you have to do this if you're an airplane mechanic," what I do is when I am bringing my airplane to a mechanic, I say, "I authorize you to do this. Give me," I expect a list of course I say it nicer than this, but the gist is, I expect you to give me a list of what you found and what things you need to work on, and an estimate of what it costs before you do any work. Please do that before you start doing any work. And that helps me get a handle on the cost of work that is done. Because it puts some limits on what can happen. Because my first annual was this was before I started reading how to have an annual. And my first annual was much more expensive than I budgeted. It was just way more expensive. And some of that, a non-trivial part of it, was because the IA decided, hey, this needs to be done, and I'm just going to do it, rather than having a discussion with me about what it was that he was going to do and why, and if there were alternatives to doing that sort of thing. So at that point, from that point forward, I started saying, hey, let me write out in advance, this is what I would like you to do. Please inspect the airplane. Here are the symptoms that I see. Before you do any work on it, have a conversation with me about what it is that you think is going to happen and what you think needs to happen. And then we'll have then I can evaluate whether or not I want that to happen. And so I set that up as ground rules with the A&Ps that I work with. And I will say that the guy who is the A&P for our 235 is not really receptive to that. He doesn't like it. He's not a fan. The guy that we go take the ad hoc work to, he's great. He loves that policy. And it works great. But the guy who does our annual is less thrilled by that. On the other hand, the guy who does our annual does, at the end of the annual, provide this exact list of what I'm asking for. So I'm a little confused by that guy, but those are the ground rules.
I think I asked you to send that to me, and it was after my first year of the annual, where I had to find the shop in less than 30 days because of the aforementioned A&P medical problem. But the shop had started doing a bunch of work on the plane, and the Rotaxes have a gearbox on top of the engine, and that's why they run at such high RPMs. Is the gearbox reduces that. You have to remove the gearbox and send it to somebody authorized for an inspection and rebuild. And it depends on if it's an early serial number, if you're running low lead gas, more than 30%. And anyway, so there's a whole matrix of those. And
can I just interrupt for 1 second just to say, for those who are listening that are renters, just that's like what Ted was just saying.
Run away. Yeah.
It's
keep reading
when you could just do the squawk and walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just that's it makes it sound pretty good. I mean, ownership is great, but hey, you're not having to package up gearboxes and send them to people and
be down for a month and not concerned. So the plane had less than 600 hours on it at the time, the plane itself. And I told them, you're wrong. I'm thinking it needs to be sent at 600 hours. It's in this category. It needs to be sent at 1,000. They were looking at an older version of the service manual that didn't indicate that. And they were also not reading it in the very precise but odd way you have to understand this or this, else this, with the, like where the parentheses end up on the else's. So I found out in this first annual that they had it already off the plane and boxed up to send away. And I happened to talk to them right then to find out they'd taken it off the plane. And I was like, no, because it's under 600 hours. It doesn't need to be sent until 1,000 hours.
It's like, not only
a huge difference.
Not only is he not an organ donor, he's not dead.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that they were going to, we'd had a little bit of that conversation about how many hours, and I thought they were going to follow up with me before they did anything. And they're like, oh no, it's all done. Don't worry about it. It's like, oh no. We got a problem here. So, they had to call Rotax to figure out what was correct there. And then they reinstalled it on their own dime. And, so after that, I knew, and that's when I talked to Mark. I'm like, I got to deal with this different. And so the next year, we're really on a really good relationship. I deliver booze and they do favors for me sometimes. But I didn't need to have them sign something, but I did have them read it, which was, please send a discrepancy list and itemized repair estimates to my email. Do not begin work other than below until we talk. And I had my list of small squawks to deal with. And so that's an example of the sort of thing that you need to keep in mind if you're considering buying or if you own a plane and your incentives and their incentives don't line up. This isn't an issue of safety. It's choosing what needs to be worked on and what can be left alone.
It's not an easy thing to, I mean, it is definitely, sometimes you have to get confrontational with them and you have to tell them this is, how it does. I do think it's, a great conversation. I do listen to the podcast, Ask the A&Ps with Mike Bush, Paul Dean, and what's her name? Connie.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Mark, weren't you on the show?
I'm going to be on the show. I had a call in with them that was recorded a few weeks back, and it hasn't been released yet.
Colleen Sterling.
That's it. Thank you.
She is amazing.
Wow. Yeah, she's great.
She is amazing.
And Paul is kind of in your neck of the woods, Brian. He's in Tennessee. I can't remember exactly where, but anyway. And by the way, plug for them. Yeah. Savvy Aviation is kind of the gold standard. They're kind of your AAA. Correct me if I'm wrong, of aviation. But Brian, you wanted to get into a little more of a debate, I believe.
Well, just so the whole thing is when this whole subject was put forth for this episode, Ted made the mistake of calling this lean of peak in a kind of gesture kind of way about
the appendix of the show. Yeah.
But I just thought, well, no. This is like I was bringing up earlier. I promised you guys would get this. Mark, you have the floor. I would like for you to explain to the world what you tried to explain to me and tried to have me do. And this is a process that you do when you fly. And it is sanctioned and it is fine and it is good and it is born of the Mike Bush thinking. But I find it where my brain can't, I can't do it.
Okay, so here's how I fly my fixed pitch propeller airplane. I wish I had a constant speed prop airplane to sort of maximize this, but I don't. I have a fixed pitch prop. So the way that I fly is I try and get the so I have in my POH a set of power things that basically says here is 65% power. I try to fly at maximum 65% power. So for example, at 8,000 feet, 65% power is 2450 RPM. So what I will do is I will go full throttle and then pull the mixture back to control the RPM. And that will slow the RPM down to about 2450. And then I fly there. That is 65% power. And I try at as many altitudes as I can to be wide open throttle and using the mixture lever to control power.
Whoa. Yeah. And that broke Lord Alpha Juliet's mind. The idea that when you're
mine too.
When you're at, let's say, high altitude, don't need to define what that is, that the element that you need to control is the fuel, not the air. So instead of controlling with your throttle, which controls air, you can control with the fuel. This is somewhat separate from the lean to peak argument.
Well, not really, actually, because so there are two regimes under which the engine operates. The engine can operate lean of peak or rich of peak. And those two regimes are very, very different. When you are lean of peak, by definition, what you have is an excess quantity of air and a limited amount of fuel. So essentially fuel molecules are looking around for air molecules. And in lean of peak, the scarce thing, the thing that is in short supply is fuel. So you have an excess of air. You have an excess of air. And so adding or taking away air when you're lean of peak doesn't do anything. Adding or taking away fuel does, because that's the thing that's rare. When you're rich of peak, it's the exact opposite. In the rich of peak world, you have an excess fuel and a scarcity of air. So to increase power in the rich of peak world, you add air or take away air. So
I've got to say, Ryan Kruger.
He's getting warmed up, boys. He's rolling up the sleeves.
Ryan Kruger is saying, "Can I get an amen?" I did the same thing. Yeah, it's this is unusual to some people, but the idea of basing it on fuel rather than air is actually a thing.
Right. And so the thing about the rich of peak, lean of peak debate is the fear that the biggest problem with engine maintenance is cylinder head temperature. And cylinder head temperature is a problem because it is a proxy for internal cylinder pressure, which we can't measure directly. We can't internal cylinder pressure when you are at high internal cylinder pressure, that is the worst thing for the engine. And the only way that you can really measure that is via cylinder head temperature. So high cylinder head temperature generally means high internal cylinder pressure, which is bad. The worst place, the most stressful place for the engine is approximately 50 degrees rich of peak. That is where you end up with the highest cylinder head pressure. Richer than that, the cylinder head pressure or cylinder head temperatures go down. Leaner than that, cylinder head temperatures go down. And this isn't just me talking. This is Lycoming. On page 3-6 of every Lycoming operator's manual is this graph that shows that peak cylinder pressure or peak cylinder temperature is about 50 degrees rich of peak. So I asked a question on my YouTube channel once that said, if you were operating lean of peak and you were concerned about high cylinder head temperatures, what should you do? Lean further? Richen a little? Oh, those were the two options. Either lean further or richen a little. And the answer is lean further. Because if you are lean of peak already and you lean further, that will bring your cylinder head temperatures down. If you richen a little, you're going to go straight into that peak cylinder head pressure point of about 50 degrees rich of peak, which is the worst place to be. If you want to richen and bring your cylinder head temperature CHTs down, you have to go way rich of peak. You have to go closer to 100 degrees rich of peak to get your cylinder head temps down. But that issue doesn't come with problem free. By doing that, by being way rich of peak, you have a whole bunch of excess fuel that isn't getting combusted. It's getting shot out your exhaust pipe, and that some of that fuel is getting partially combusted, which is what fouls your plugs. The partial combustion of the fuel fouls your plugs. So I like to operate lean of peak because I know when I'm lean of peak, all the fuel is getting combusted, and the excess thing that's getting thrown out the tailpipe is air. And that doesn't do anything to the engine.
So counter argument is fuel is cheap. It's not quite as cheap as air. Air's roughly free for us, but fuel is cheap compared to replacing my engine. So why don't I just run rich peak and pay a little bit extra in fuel?
Well, because you can run rich of peak and pay a little bit extra in fuel. But the real thing you want to try and preserve is cylinder head temperatures. You want your CHTs down. When CHTs are down, that is the nicest you can be on the engine. And it is easier to have lower cylinder head temperatures, lean of peak, than it is rich of peak. And there are costs to having low cylinder head temperatures on the rich of peak side, which is fouled plugs and all kinds of problems that come along with that. So for me, it really is what are you comfortable with? But it's also like, when I look at it, it's, you give up a little bit of power because when you go rich of peak, you do get a little bit more power for the same cylinder head temperature. So on the lean of peak side, you give up a little bit of power, but man, your cylinders are clean. The bore scope images of your cylinders are so clean. Your spark plugs are clean. It's great. I'm a big proponent of lean of peak. And now I say this fully with the understanding that I am not an A&P. But I would, the guy at, I really wanted to ask that A&P when we were in Fairmont. Really wanted to ask him that question. but I didn't want to pick a fight over the phone.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think is interesting. People get really worked up about this stuff, right? Like it's constitutional or something. But the other part of this too, that I think is fascinating, is that, and one thing I'm grateful for is that my mechanic always reminds us that the POH, or the AFM, was written a very long time ago, and we have learned a lot of things since the 60s. And so it would be foolish not to take those learnings to account. And Lycoming is carrying on those conversations and has grown that knowledge, and other companies as well. And then you've got this strange point where you have to modulate current knowledge with what you feel comfortable with. And I think that a lot of us are lower hour pilots that are really concerned with procedure, and this is the way I've always done it. And if anything, the conversation, without necessarily choosing a point of view, is really about encouraging people to get involved with your mechanic, do more reading, obviously check out any resources you can find and see for yourself. But that's part of what this whole quest is. Also, renters, squawk and walk, baby.
Yeah.
Flying club members the same.
Yep. So flight club members. Yep. So if you'd rather not have to try to understand what Mark just said, because I struggle, and I'm doing a lot of smiling and nodding while I'm trying to keep up. And I'm going to have to take notes, and then I got to go study this later, and then the tears are going to fall, and then I give them a paper, and then it's all, and then it's a whole thing. But yeah.
I wanted to hit a few comments. Ryan K in our office says excess fuel gums up the engine and leads to sticking valves, which I have heard that before. Also, our friend Michael Gillette says Mark is running lane of peak as well as the engine. So I felt. And then also one more from Chuck in the chat says, this is why Mike and Paul push an engine monitor system, so you can actually see what's going on. You can monitor the CHTs. And I agree, you don't actually have to spend a lot of money. We have a JPM in ours, which is just a little bar graph, and it has a digital readout, but
it's very 1989 looking. As
is everything else in the cockpit of the Beast.
I thought you were going to talk about Chuck's other comment. I bet Mark stayed at a Motel 6.
They'll leave light on for you.
Don't knock Motel 6 and the upgrade, which is Super 8. That's
right.
These are valid places.
Amen to that.
No, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. Let me tell you that. That is where I stayed.
Well, it's not all free. Like as a renter, one of the times I hated was I was flying with a friend. I'd gone out to the coast, and the RV-12 I was in, the plugs loaded up, and it did not want to run. It was giving a lane fault, which is like a magneto error. And I called back to the owner of the plane, and he said, well, you just need to run hot, which is true. That burned off a lot of it. And he said, just circle and climb up over the airport and then fly home. It's like, well, great. So now I just had to spend a lot of time on my dime to fly his plane back home and worry about if there were going to be any problems with it. So it's not all free, right? Like this isn't just the cost of fuel. It's the cost of everything else that can go wrong. Yeah.
Yep. And some people don't even have the luxury. Our friend Howard has a Cessna 140. He says it didn't come with a mixture control. It was optional in 1946. That said, it is being added as part of the engine. So
yeah,
I think Mark would maybe have a nervous breakdown not being able to control the mixture.
How would I control power?
Exactly.
So let me
explain to you. Runway somewhere.
I'll explain to you how it's done in the Rotax injected world. When you get above 97% throttle, it goes rich a peak. As soon as you pull it back below that, it goes lean a peak. And the difference in gallons per hour is huge because, of course, I've got all the instrumentation. But that difference is just it's amazing on what that does. It also means, you're supposed to only stay at 100% for 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
But it's amazing if you pull back during the climb, what a difference that makes.
So Ted, what you're saying is that the Rotax has a give it the beans setting and then everything else.
Yeah. It's the get me away from the ground.
Wait a minute.
That I have time to fix my errors.
Yeah.
Give it the beans, which means 8 gallons per hour.
Yeah.
I mean, let's keep perspective here.
Yeah.
It's been a great discussion, and I want to thank everybody in our chat for joining us. Mark, we do appreciate you joining us.
Yeah. Good stuff, Mark.
Well, thank you for letting me get that off my chest.
Yeah.
Yes. And we'll be, hopefully we'll hear you on the Ask the A&Ps podcast here.
Yeah. And everybody send your feedback and be very impassioned and opinionated and convinced that your path is the best path. And then we will read competing opinions, because that's what Rich of Peak, Lean of Peak does to people. It's gold for content, right? Like let's get it going.
And we're hoping.
Yeah. Subject line, Mark is wrong.
Yeah. I'm hopeful maybe one day we could get one of those guys on the podcast as a guest host, because I think they would appeal to a lot. Again, you can leave us a review. We'd prefer 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Send us some feedback. Tell us what you think. Anything else, gentlemen, that you want to get off your chest?
No, thank you for this. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thought I would provide our wisdom from the tailwheel world in honor of Brian. I can't remember if I've done this one or not, but I don't think so.
Oh, good. I got a drink left for saying tailwheel.
Yeah. Here we go. Tailwheel pilots don't land. They negotiate with the runway. Signing off, episode 146 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Thank you, everybody.